What is happening out there, Roto Scouts basketball fans? Good to see you, gang. Happy Wednesday, happy hump day. Hope your weeks are going well. Another week flying by, January flying by, 2025 flying by already. It's going to be baseball season before we know it. It's going to be summer. We're going to be back around. It's going to be next Christmas. Crazy how quick it goes. Hopefully you guys did well last night. Pretty decent slate. I only entered a few lineups, but put most of them into the money. Saw a little profitable day. No crazy winners, but a couple contenders early on that kind of fell by the wayside as far as hitting the top spots. But not a bad day overall. Felt like the projections were pretty much on point. Got a really... Whoop, something just happened. Oh, my ad blocker just updated. That was weird. Popped something up out of nowhere. Got a weird one today. If you're not paying attention to the news, the Milwaukee at New Orleans game is postponed. So take that out of everything. It's already been removed here. It's removed from projections on the website. We don't have to worry about it. But make sure that it's not in there. If you're running Sims or whatever, make sure that it's not in the default files. Do that ahead of time because it'll trip you up if you get down 5 minutes from lock and all of a sudden you've got that in there and it rejects your upload or whatever. That is a stumbling point. So always best to take care of those things ahead of time. Otherwise, really ugly looking slate. A lot of ins, a lot of outs. Multiple question marks lingering. Several teams just not playing most of their NBA players. It's going to be an interesting one. Gojo's here. Happy hump day to you too, pal. Andy, good afternoon. I'm a loser till I win the millies here. I guess as long as he keeps on showing up, we know what that means about his loser status. But welcome, pal. Good to see you. Going to get you out of having to ever attend these shows again one day. You're going to check in. You're going to say, it's just going to say, I'm no longer a loser on there. Going to give us a hello, and then you're going to just disappear. You're going to be done. You're going to be a millionaire. Can't wait. Mamba, another big win. Nice. Thank you. Love it. Good to hear. What'd you get? I love hearing about Mamba's victories. Mamba consistently solid across the board. Always has good questions to drop into the chat. Catalyst for discussions. We're not always on the same page, but definitely keeps the pot stirred and definitely cashes tickets. Love it. I can't wait either, but I'll still drop by. Appreciate it, pal. Yeah, obviously we don't want you to go anywhere, but yeah, let's get that W. Just killing time here, waiting on the... Oh, there it goes. I was waiting on the DraftKings board to pop up from the sim. As you can see, it's not loaded in there yet. Got some weighty FanDuel ownership. I'm expecting some pretty weighty DraftKings ownership to pop up. We will see how this looks. Let's hope for the best. Oh, that's not... Oh, yeah, that game's... Right. In addition to having to remove the Milwaukee at New Orleans game, we also have two different slates across sites. 8 games on FanDuel, 6 games on DraftKings. That's what those empties are. Threw me for a second there. All right, let's see. Yeah, as expected. And I got to take the juniors off of the DraftKings ownership because I still have never corrected that. So another one of those days where just everything changed like 3 different times as I was doing the projections. At one point, I just bailed out, went over to knock out the 4-game NHL slate, and then came back around and finished it up. You would think I would have fixed this by now, but here we are. Derek Lively is apparently going to be out for quite a while. Oops. Yeah, Murph doesn't really matter, but might as well get it right. All right, that should be everybody. One of these days, we'll get that unified fantasy naming thing going. All right, so LaMelo, Cade are coming up big. There's Reese Beekman. That's the one I was wondering about. Reese Beekman's coming up massive on the DraftKings slate because he's 3,000. You've also got Nick Smith Jr., technically. But Nick Smith, as far as FanDuel is concerned, that's one of the ones I was just fixing. So between those two guys, one's 3,200, the other one's 3,000. They're coming up at 78% and 67% on your DraftKings results in our top 150. They're two of the most highly owned players on that DraftKings slate. They are just straight up building block value guys. Beekman, I've only got it 22 minutes. I question the fragility of that, but the Nets are without basically everyone. 0.65 per minute, obviously not great. 0.82, I've got a little bit more faith, I guess, in Nick Smith, but not much. He's not a very good basketball player. 3,200 on DraftKings. At 41, he hits the board a little bit on FanDuel. At 37, so does Beekman on FanDuel, but they're just much, much more crucial pieces. I mean, look at the difference in exposures in our top 150 for those two players. So that is dramatic across sites. We've got a lot more value on the board to work with today. As you look up and down, there's plenty of fives over here. There's enough 5-5s and stuff to work with on the DraftKings side. Fewer, obviously, on the smaller DraftKings slate overall, but definitely enough to work with. But it's going to be an ugly one. A lot of the Nets are out. A lot of the Clippers are out. Multiple question marks lingering on those. So not great. Starting at the top of the board, 234.5 point total between Detroit and Atlanta. Atlanta favored by 3 in a home game. Actually looks like a pretty juicy spot. I think we can get pieces and parts from both sides of that one, and probably should be. Obviously we've got a massive chunk of Cade Cunningham on both sites. We've got some Tobias Harris poking his head through. We've got Onyeka Okongwu standing up. He got the start in the last game, played 28.5 minutes. Got him right back at that 28, hoping for the best there. We've talked about him a bunch of times. I know Mom is a fan. So I'm liking some pieces from that one. Aja Thompson's down here. What I'm not seeing is too much from Atlanta outside of Okongwu. Here's Trey. Trey looks a little better on DraftKings. But we get, obviously, pieces with a couple major upside pieces like Cade out of that one. Great total. Good game environment with a close game projected. 3.5 point spread between Minnesota and Dallas. Minnesota favored on the road. Dallas still without Luka, also without Derek Lively. Just a 215 point total there, but we're obviously going to pick up some value pieces. We saw Danny Gafford explode the other day. If you played that early game or if you just saw it, it was high 60s, I want to say, fantasy score. So just massive performance there. You're not going to chase that kind of a total from them, but definitely some pieces from Dallas are going to look pretty good. Minnesota straight up are who they are, kind of a spot for that very tight high-end rotation. Phoenix and Brooklyn. Phoenix favored by 12.5 on the road in New York. 215.5 point total in that one. Again, tons of Nets missing. We're going to get value on the Nets side. We're going to have some of the upside players from the Phoenix side come through. A little bit of KD, a little bit of Booker, and then pieces and parts outside of those guys. Utah at OKC, walking into just get completely destroyed by the Thunder. Thunder favored by 16.5 in a home game. I would take them in that spot. I think that's probably too low. The Jazz are just awful. 232.5 point total in that game. Shea, maybe. How did he come up? With the weight that's going to LaMelo and Cade on both sites, probably not also getting Shea alongside those guys, but he would be at worst a reasonable alternative. The difference between him and them is I've got them both at 36 minutes, and I only gave Shea 32 today. For one, they play a little bit lighter given the spread that OKC has, and just with the expectations that he's really not going to need to be out there in the fourth quarter all that much, I kind of trimmed it a little bit. I don't do that a ton, but this seemed like a spot to really be justified in doing that, and it created a big, big difference. So we'll see how that shakes out when we sort for guards. Charlotte at Memphis, I just mentioned LaMelo. Memphis favored by 12 in a home game, but a 241 point total pacey game. Should be run and gun situation for LaMelo. 10-2 on FanDuel, 10-7 on DraftKings, and we got him as a massive piece on both sites. We're well ahead of the field on both him and Cade today. Cleveland at Houston. 2 point spread. Cavs favored on the road in Houston. Kind of a grindy defensive spot, but not a terrible total. 228 point total. Both these teams can score. They're just also good defensively. So whatever we get out of this one, perfectly fine. At the top end, I'm not sure that we're going to get anybody. Is anybody coming up like crazy? Yeah, I wouldn't think anybody would come through crazy, crazy high end as I'm glancing at this. But I do think you can mine, rotational pieces at worst. The Amens of the world, 4%, 16% on FanDuel, more significant over there. Oh, PJ's on the board here too. Stupid initials. So yeah, some swappable parts from that one. You can see a star like Ant from the Minnesota-Dallas game, even with 38 minutes, even at a lower price than the LaMelos and the Cades of the world, not coming through as much. 4% on DraftKings, below the field pretty significantly. 15% closer to the field, but an undercut. So it's pretty clear cut where we want to be spending our money at the star level. And then we've got some just values inherent to the slate. We've got Mark Williams coming through big time on both sites at a different price across sites. That doesn't really seem to matter. Just another guy floated by the game environment from Charlotte and Memphis. He's also playing minutes and putting up great points per minute numbers. Final two games, the FanDuel games, Golden State at Sacramento. Sacramento favored by 7.5 in a home game. Still a lot of missing bodies for Golden State as well. Number of questions also. 230-point total in that one. And then Boston and the Clippers. Again, the Clippers without already half the team, and the other half is questionable to play. Boston favored by 12. 219-point total. Boston are who they are. Spot basically everybody's healthy except for KP and Horford are questionable. So if we get news on Boston, then maybe some things emerge. But it's just going to kind of gently nudge some guys up the board depending on who's in and who's out. As far as those ins and outs go, probable. Trae Young is probable. Luke Kennard is probable. And then the following players are all actually just available. Zach Edey, John Collins, Lauri Markkanen, Colin Sexton, and Oscar Tshiebwe. I don't know how to say that name. Tshiebwe, it's probably a silent T, right? Like Czar. So it's probably like Tshiebwe. Oscar Tshiebwe. He's available. Questionables, Quentin Grimes, Najee Marshall, Klay Thompson, Bradley Beal, Karis LeVert, Jalen Williams without the Y, Gary Payton Jr. It would be weird if Gary Payton Sr. was questionable today. Drew Holiday. Drew was the other Celtic I was struggling to think of. Drew, Horford, and KP are all questionable. And then Nick Batum and James Harden remain questionable for LA in that late game. And then the outs, Jaden Ivey, Kobe Buffkin, Larry Nance Jr., Zachary Reese-Shea, Cody Zeller, Dante DiVincenzo, Luka Doncic, Dante Exum, Jaden Hardy, Derek Lively, Dwight Powell, Yusuf Nurkic, Bojan Bogdanovic, Cam Johnson's doubtful, Maxwell Lewis, D'Anthony Melton, D'Angelo Russell, Ben Simmons, Cam Thomas, Trendon Watford, Zaire Williams. That's essentially the Nets' entire roster of NBA players. Trey Mann, Brandon Miller, skipping ahead to Grant Williams. Brandon Miller, Tadani Salam, Grant Williams, Jake LaRavia, LaRavia is doubtful. Marcus Smart, Cam Spencer, Vince Williams Jr., Evan Mobley, Isaac Okoro, Jabari Smith, Jordan Clarkson, Taylor Hendricks. Here's all the Utah guys. Jordan Clarkson, Taylor Hendricks, Johnny Juzang, Micah Potter, Bryce Sensabaugh, Cody Williams all out. Isaiah Hartenstein continues to be out, as does Chad Holmgren and AJ Mitchell. Kyle Anderson, Draymond Green, Jonathan Kuminga, Brandon Podziemski all out. Chris Dunn, Kawhi Leonard, Norm Powell, PJ Tucker, and Ivica Zubac all out. So that's a long list. But if we get no Batum, no Harden for LA, then all bets are off as far as everything from LA in the late game. You're going to want to have some spots to move around on FanDuel for those. Less so in the Golden State one. It's mostly, we've got, 5 guys that are key players questionable in that Boston and Clippers game. It's just a low-end overall game. Boston should handle their business pretty easily. But you're going to want to have some swaps on FanDuel. Don't have to worry about it as much on DK. Short DK slate tonight. DK ends at 8? Yeah, DraftKings, you've got 3. That one's out. So it's 3 and 3. 3 at 7:30 and then 3 at 8 o'clock. And that's it. So your swap opportunities are kind of limited on DK tonight. But it's 5 o'clock now. Let's dive in. Again, 7:30 start. Hit the like button if you get a chance. It does actually help. So I'm told. And by so I'm told, I mean I hear what you guys hear when I watch other shows or listen to podcasts or whatever, and that's that these things help. So I assume they do. I don't really know. I definitely know that subscribing helps, and we're trying to get over 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. I'm just talking about the free. Click the little button for me down there. It costs you nothing. Takes 4 seconds. If it took you 4 seconds to click the little subscribe button down there, I would be concerned about you. It takes a lot less than 4 seconds to do. So if you don't mind, click that. Then mute notifications. You don't have to worry about knowing when it goes live unless you want to. But if you click it, you know when we go live. Trying to get it to 1,000 subscribers to monetize things a little bit better. Helps grow the channel. Once you hit that point, YouTube does some more things for you. So it's all good. you check out rotoscouts.com, we've got projections up for NBA. These NBA projections that you're looking at here, not this dashboard with all the fancy arrows and everything that mean less and less, but the projections, all the ins and the outs for NBA, for NHL, for this upcoming weekend of championship football, for MLB, which is right around the corner. Going to add some season-long content. I basically made the decision that I'm going to be doing that. Man, talk about committing to something. Yikes. But we're going to have that, all of that, for under $1 a day. You subscribe today on a weekly. We have weekly, monthly, and quarterly plans. You subscribe today on a weekly. You get through to the middle of next week, every NBA main slate, every NHL main slate, and the weekend of football for under $7. Trying to make it as economically viable as possible for everybody out there who plays a lineup a day, 5 lineups a day, 20 lineups. If you play 150, this stuff works just as well for you. But I am trying to cater everything to the people who really make up 85% of the DFS community out there. The people who are putting a few bucks in a day, trying to win big, but not necessarily chasing 150 optimally built lineups, game theory optimal approach. We want to be game theory optimal. That's what all these percentages and everything are about. But we're really trying to zero in on the big, massive people that are looking to not break the bank on their projections. I think we're doing okay there. Anyway, enough plugging. Let's dive into this thing. Appreciate all you guys out there. Everybody who hit the like and so on. As Mamba says, this is the greatest show on YouTube. Out of every show, not just NBA DFS shows. Every show. You guys like hot ones? This show's better, per Mamba. Forget it. Less chicken, unfortunately. Man, if I could do this show with a giant plate of hot wings, now we're talking. I might have to try that one day. Just order out. Sit here eating hot wings. It's like, that would be so gross to be like this close up on my face. And we're like, so anyway, SGA. So SGA is down the board there. Line 107 as you're glancing at the board. We did not get any shares of SGA on FanDuel. 10-5 on DraftKings at point guard only. We got 1 share. And again, I'm going to directly blame that on the fact that we're getting so much LaMelo and Cade. At worst, SGA is going to be a viable rotation piece. More so on DraftKings where his 10-5 plays between these two players. The fact that LaMelo is 200 more than SGA speaks kind of directly to the minutes differences. Right? We've got more projectable upside of minutes most of the time. The averages are essentially the same. But in a game like this, again, I've got SGA projected for 4 fewer minutes. It's 2 fewer minutes than he normally plays. And we could see him hit a flat 30. Really depends on how OKC's running the score up in this one. So he's taking a bit of a haircut there. If you gave him back those 2 minutes, or if you get, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to get him to a 35-minute projection, which is where he typically goes in a competitive game, he'd probably be right up there, and they'd be splitting these distributions 3 ways instead of 2 ways. So at worst, again, against an awful Utah team, SGA is playable. 158 per minute, nearly 33% usage, among the highest in both of those categories. 1.56 per minute on DraftKings. Bit my tongue. But up at the top of the board, again, LaMelo in that crazy pacey high total game against Memphis. At 36 minutes of 1.42 FanDuel, 1.49 DraftKings, he looks absolutely tremendous. He's the highest projected player on the FanDuel slate. I think on both. Yeah, should be the highest on both. But you can see we've got Cade is right next to him. SGA not far off, and again, that's only the difference of the minutes. So 3 tremendous point guard superstar options. Cade at 132, 138 as far as a per minute rate is a step down from both of those other players. He's a little bit cheaper, 10,000 on FanDuel, 10.2 on DraftKings. Very solid environment for Cade as well. Back up to my game screen on the other side. Detroit picking up a solid handful of possessions in this game. carrying a 234-point total, and again, getting this game at a 3-point spread. Detroit's been competitive at worst throughout most of the season. It's actually a pretty decent matchup here. So getting Cade at this explosive a number, 79%, way above the field on DraftKings. They are technically both below the value threshold, but as we've talked about a bunch of times, once you get into this tier, particularly on a day where there's a bunch of value-oriented plays, you don't have to worry about that as much. On FanDuel, they're both well above our value threshold. So tons and tons of both of those players. Power says Cam Johnson, Ben Simmons, both officially out. Yeah, I've got them both out completely already, but the confirmation is good. Reese Beekman to the moon. Brennan to the moon, Beekman to the moon. Send them both. It's fine. Yeah, Beekman's right here. Again, that's a play, and that's in 22 minutes. Again, the minutes I do think are fragile in either direction. We could see more, we could see less. He is a critical value on DraftKings. In 22 minutes at 3,000, we're getting him at a 7.13 value score. That's with just 0.65 per minute for the season. For today, where did he land? Ah, damn it, I closed the Wowie window. Significantly higher than that today. In like the 0.9 range. I just want to pull that back. I'll do it later. I'm going to punch them in so that I remember to do it. I just want to double check everybody's rates. But Beekman comes up. I mean, he is projected for a significant chunk of ownership. We've got him basically dead around the same projections as what's drawing the ownership. So we're way ahead of the field here, but you can see it's not a straight line up. He is massively owned by the field as well, and probably going to go up even further as he gets talked up during the afternoon shows and everything. Heat planning to suspend Jimmy Butler for 2 more games, per Shams. Apparently there's buzz that there actually are some legs for getting him to Phoenix. There's all kinds of machinations with a 3-way deal with Phoenix, Miami, and Milwaukee. I don't know that they would do it, though, because the Milwaukee side, at least of the proposed deal that I saw, seemed a little bit thin. I'm not sure why Milwaukee would be interested, unless they're getting major, pick compensation. Power, I just think they're going to be so shorthanded that it doesn't matter. Like, these aren't really starters minutes at 22, and you can see how much that's coming up. It's just a $3,000 building block. So I don't disagree with you about who might be starting, but we've got very few bodies just in general. I've got 9 guys projected. And let's see. Confirmed everybody else that I have on this roster. There's got to be at least 1 or 2 G League bodies that maybe they're calling on. Let me double check that. Not the minutes. Injury. What does the 4:30 have for us? Yeah, so I think they're down to 9 bodies today. And that's throwing minutes to Tariq Whitehead. That's throwing minutes to Beekman. That's throwing minutes to Evbowan. It's another one I have no idea how to pronounce. Tosan. It's probably Toshin. So I do, like I was saying, I do think those minutes have fragility down to 16, 18. Even then, you're not completely dead because he is just the flat minimum price on DraftKings. And he's already not as relevant to the FanDuel board. You can see a 5.89 value score. That is a relevant in a vacuum value score. But we've got so much upside going through the point guard spot on FanDuel. And these 2 guys point guard only and he's point guard only. I think he's just getting boxed out by 130 some odd % of LaMelo and Cade to a degree. We've also got Nick Smith. That's shooting guard, so that matters less on FanDuel. What else are we getting at point? There's got to be another blocker in here somewhere at point. It's only 158. The hell are all the point guards? It's 170. There's got to be somebody who, I guess, doesn't have guard eligibility. Hold on. That's what it was. I was down the board. It's somebody up here. Yeah, there you go. Harden. That was there's our other 30%. 57% of Kevin Porter. That's probably all going into the shooting guard because we were at 170 for point. So that's where it went. All right. Crisis averted. I got worried there for a second. I forgot we had those extra games up at the top on the FanDuel board. So yeah, Beekman, building block, right? These are the guys that you want, right? These are the plays that they come up that strong for a reason. He is the little stool that helps you reach the big items on the top shelf. Nick Smith is essentially the same thing. 6.91 value score. We got him 78% of the time, massively ahead of the field. 30 minutes the other day, stepped into the starting rotation, starters run. I've got him projected at 27, so a little bit behind that. I could see upside blasting past 30 minutes in, again, a very, very pacey game. It's just you're talking about a guy who's a .78, .82 player across sites this year, and that comes in just 12 and a half minutes a game across 21 minutes, so it's not exactly a robust sample. .67 last year. The good news is he does take shots, right? 19.6% usage rate this year, 20.2% last year. So you're not getting a guy who's out there just kind of standing in the corner lost, not doing anything for these minutes. You're at least getting a participant in the game at a pacey game. So I like the Nick Smith option. It's not comfy, but it's there, and it's totally viable on DraftKings for 32. Those are your two key building blocks for the day. On FanDuel at 41, he's nowhere near as critical. He is above a 5 value score, 5.15, shooting guard only, no flexibility of position like what he's got on DraftKings where you get him at shooting guard and small forward. But a 5.15 value in a vacuum would play a little bit better than that. I think he's just getting eclipsed by some of the guard options that we've got that look a little bit better than him, like down the board, Tyrese Martin from the Nets, who just got a mention. He's pulling 34% at 4,900. 16% of Amin Thompson on FanDuel, so he's just getting boxed out of some of those shares. Further down the board, Keon Johnson in line 113 there. 22% going through shooting guard on FanDuel. So we just need Nick Smith a little bit less, but he's definitely playable. We're below the field, though. That's an established position. I don't mind being at this position on FanDuel, and I think you should be at or about that kind of distribution against the field on DraftKings. These are two very, very key value plays right now. Lou Dort, always going to land from me as kind of a mix and match piece. That's probably because I'm used to him more on the FanDuel board, where he's always just correctly priced in like this $4,900 to $5,300 territory. For the minutes he plays, for the rate that he puts up in most situations, that's appropriate at best, maybe a little high, and you get him around these kind of distributions. On DraftKings, he's only 4,500. He's a .76 per minute player, but the minutes are pretty rock solid around 30. 29.1 on the average. I've got him at 30 tonight. Flat 32% level with the field. He's a 5.40 value. That's a little bit lighter than our threshold, but so is everybody at the position other than these two guys and $4,000 Karis LeVert, who's a different kind of play and who is also questionable to play this game. Everybody else is in this kind of territory as far as the value score among guards. So Lou Dort, definitely in a soft game. He could become a bit of a victim of short minutes as well. You could see him playing 27, 28 instead of 29, 30, and that has an impact for a .76 per minute guy who needs every one of those minutes and every one of those .76 per minute points. But at 45, it's easily playable. Desmond Bane, below the field on both, perfectly fine to play on the other side of that pacey Charlotte-Memphis game. But the Memphis side of that one, I feel like they're coming up a little bit more just are who they are kind of spot. Like Bane 18-16 across sites. Ja, even being cheap, we really didn't get a lot of Ja Morant. I would like to have more than this, just in the raw sense of just it's Ja Morant. But we're really only getting about 30 minutes out of him. Played 30 the other day, put up a 35-3. He's averaged just 28.5 in his 25 games for the season. 1.40 per minute, one of the better raw per minute producers on the entire slate. Nearly 31% usage, one of the more high volume players on the entire slate. But really not hitting as hard as I thought he might. Part of that, probably, again, just all the weight that's going through LaMelo and Cade. So as another, at worst, rotational piece at a significant price offset, Ja's on the board at worst, and he's on the board on both sites. He's coming up as a little bit better of a value at the $100 less DraftKings price. The one that he might be the most interesting rotational piece for, actually, is SGA, if SGA was coming up a little bit more, just because they're both projected for 30 minutes. So there's a little bit of commonality there, and you're getting essentially a $2,000 discount on Ja. Exactly $2,000 on DraftKings, exactly $3,000 on FanDuel. That's significant, but SGA is not coming up. But just in the sense of another guy on that tier of player that's a rotational piece through all those point guard shares. But per the numbers, it's LaMelo and Cade day. You can throw Trae Young into that exact same bucket. 9,400, 9,600. It's 11% on DraftKings below the field. It's a 1.33 per minute point guard. 1.3% on FanDuel below the field, but he's not getting as much popularity. Smaller DraftKings slate, so he's picking up a little bit more there. But I think he fits into the exact same bucket as Ja does, where he's a little bit of a price offset. He's entirely playable in an appealing enough game environment. There's a little offset from him, from Ja to him going down the board in terms of the points per minute numbers. And he's a little bit more expensive. But he's got a higher minutes projection. He's got more reliability of playing 35, 36 minutes in a game that is projected to be very competitive. So I'd probably lean Trae over Ja, over SGA, while also including him on just the same list of rotational type point guards from that top shelf. Timmy, I think you guys know that I'm not a fan. We did get him 14% of the time on DraftKings. That's comfortably below the field. If I could kick that down to like 10%, I would across 150 lineups. He's a 0.63 per minute player. I don't really care that the minutes are there. He's played essentially 30 minutes a night, which is where I've got him. There's more for everybody to do with Jaden Ivey out. But Tobias Harris has benefited from that more than Timmy Hardaway has. 15% usage this season, 0.59 per minute. That's down from 22% and 0.81, which was already not overly appealing last year. I'm just not really there on the Hardaway play. You can have him. He's perfectly playable, but he's not appealing. He's not a go-to, and he's a spot I would look to reduce against the field a little bit further. LeVert is definitely on the board. Again, he's one of our three guys above a 5.5 value score on DraftKings at the guard positions. 4,000, as long as he's out there, I think we're good. 0.96 per minute. We drew 15% of them. That is below the field. I wouldn't go chasing more shares, but whatever you get, assuming he's out there, perfectly fine. On FanDuel at 52, we didn't get him at all. Good illustration of how much that 1,200 matters from site to site. Different positioning as well, small forward shooting guard. If you had point guard on FanDuel, maybe he sneaks into one or two, but probably not. 4.26 value score, way off the mark. So, again, Tyrese, I've already given 32 minutes at 4,900 small forward and shooting guard. He's pulling nearly 35% ownership. If anything, he's just going to go up from here. So, it looks like a key piece on FanDuel. We're level with the field. As usual, I'd rather have a position. But I think at 49, it's not damaging to just be level with the field and just take what you get on that play. And just, you're eating chalk to a degree without being ahead or behind that. I don't love it, but that's not a bad price point and minutes expectation to do that with. I'd rather do that there than on like a Beekman where I'm not entirely confident, even at a better price, of what the minutes are going to look like, what the production's going to look like. For 52 on DraftKings, he didn't really come up. That's a $300 higher price on the DraftKings slate. We did get him 10% of the time. That's below the field on DK, though. We're a half a point shy of our value threshold at 5.5. He's playable at a 5. But we've got a number of better options. We've got several better options. A number is still in there. Trying to get it out. Gotten way better at not writing it when I'm writing. But it comes out when I'm talking sometimes. I don't like it. It's so vague and just like, of course it's a number. They're all numbers. Amen against Cleveland. Again, both teams in that game, good defensively, but we've got a solid total. Like I said, teeing the show up, it is a matchup between two teams that can score the basketball. So I don't mind taking parts out of this one. Amen's obviously playing great, 1.05 per minute on FanDuel, 1.02 per minute on DraftKings. About 30 minutes a night over his 39 with upside from more recently. He played 40 plus the other day. Put up just around a point per minute in that one. But as long as we're getting security of minutes above, say, 34, for 81, 8,000 across sites at shooting guard and small forward, perfectly fine. Less appealing on DraftKings, just a 4.72 value for the 8,000 over there. 4.85, closer to the mark on the larger FanDuel slate. Two players I will always take shares of and wouldn't mind having a few more in my pocket while maintaining this kind of a position on both on DraftKings. All right, if I can get my way to like 8% while still being appreciably below the field on Ant, just a few more raw shares, I would. Same thing with Booker. Phoenix should be able to do basically whatever they want against a bunch of non-NBA talents. Booker's a part of that. I've got him at his usual complement of 36 minutes. Could play a little bit less, but I wasn't going out on a limb to project it for Phoenix that way. So both these guys a little under maybe where you'd want them in just like the total count across 150 lineups of how many shares you have. But again, relative to the field, I think I would look to be below on both, just given how they land price-wise against some of the other competitors. On DraftKings, where you've got the guard spot and some positional commonality between the point guards and those guys, they can also be safely considered in that same bucket as Trey, as SGA, as John Morant, as Donovan Mitchell, who I think I skipped over at 8,400, point guard and shooting guard eligible. There's just so many guard options at upper tier talents. I mean, look at this board. LaMelo, Cade, Trey, Garland, Ja, Mitchell, Ant, Booker, SGA all the way down. That is a bunch of talent for this slate. Living off like Freddie and Jalen Green down here. Obviously different caliber talents. There's a lot to work with, though. And there's a lot of flexibility, and there's not a ton of daylight between some of the projections and the prices. So the small moves contingent that I've talked about a lot, looking to take some of these guys, if you're getting off of some of these and move them down to here. If you're going off of these, move them down slightly. Small moves. There's plenty of options for those today, and you can see them illustrated by the colors. Just look for the commonality of colors and commonality of prices to boil it down to the easiest possible human perception. Mix and match shares of Grayson Allen, Bogdan Bogdanovic. No real appeal there. Single-digit exposures to any of those guys is fine. If you're getting a few shares of any of those guys, it's fine. A few additional shares of a $3,800 Bogdan is a rotational piece from a couple of these guys, especially like the $4,000 guys right here. Not a bad consideration. If I have more Bogdan and less Timmy Hardaway, I'm not completely upset about it. Not that he's been that much better, but he has been better than Timmy this year. 0.63 from Timmy versus 0.76 from Bogdan, and we know for sure that Bogdan Bogdanovic is a better player than what we've seen this year. Malik Beasley out of that solid-looking Detroit-Atlanta game really didn't come up. 2%, well below the field on FanDuel. Same deal on DraftKings, 2%. He's 51 and 5,200. He does have multi-position on FanDuel, which should help him out a little bit, but doesn't seem to really matter. He's been playing at a 0.86, 0.91 Again, in the absence of Jaden Ivey, and he's benefited from other absences throughout the season to give him minutes and upside from time to time. The minutes have come down a little bit lately. I've got him at just 26. It's a little bit lighter than what his average is, but it's in line with more recent games. So not completely wild about the Beasley play. Did get up to 29.8, but only put up 22.5 FanDuel points for it the other day. So I'm happy to have a position on him and negligible shares. Jones, Caruso coming up as mix and match plays on the DraftKings slate, not at all on FanDuel, but if you had onesie, twosie shares, it's fine. They're competent players. Dyson Daniels, a player who I always mention, it's just difficult to project him, just given the abundance of stocks and everything that gets him there on the days where he gets there. And then the other days are just kind of balanced out like this. So I'd always rather be here, and I tend to take my losses on Dyson Daniels when I take him. Sometimes he'll creep into lineups. There was a day, I want to say last week, where he was coming up a lot, and I had a lot of him. But on a day like today, with a lot of options going through guard, really don't see him popping up. The performance could be there, but I don't think he's going to land in a ton of lineups. Not from us, and I doubt from anybody else. So Keon, again, with 30-plus minutes projected at 5,000, looking like a piece on FanDuel, but we are below the field. Technically, that's a 100th of a point below our value threshold of 5. So as far as comparing to those guys, I'd be willing to bail out on some of those plays. Oh, that's why I realized why those guys weren't showing. I forgot I have to cut by FanDuel positioning on a day like this. That's why we're missing those guys at the top. So yeah, Keon there at 22 versus some of the Tyrese shares from the same team. If we're crossing over at, small forward and shooting guard. Maybe some of the $5,200 Leverts and Dorts. Not that we got Levert on FanDuel. If I can replace $4,300 Timmy, the few shares that I got of him with any of those, that's fine. But not a hyper appealing play either. 0.78 per minute, 0.80 on DraftKings. Didn't get him at all on DraftKings. Other nets look more appealing than Keon, but he's there. The minutes are there. 6% of Kyrie. Another player I could take a little bit more of. 8,800, not a bad price. Just not a good matchup for the Dallas side of that one going up against Minnesota. So really not looking to take a lot out of the Minnesota backcourt. But a few shares of Kyrie is fine. Up at the top, the differentiated plays that are not on the DraftKings slate. KPJ in that incredibly shortened Clippers rotation. Definitely looking like a piece at 57% exposure and above the field. Terrence Mann, same story, 44% above the field. James Harden, below the field at 30%. The best player in that group. He's also questionable today. He's putting up 1.25 per minute. The minutes at 34 to 36 would be very secure, assuming that he's going to play. We've all been there, done that with James before, but at 8,700, he's very, very playable. But I like the idea that we're kind of behind the field there and we're getting tons and tons of LaMelo and Cade in exchange. The one thing I would say is I do want to have some movable pieces in that game. But be aware, if you have a lot of Harden, then he doesn't play. You've got to have an alternative to be able to move off of that. Fortunately, you do have Steph Curry at 86 playing in that same time window. So for 100 less, you can pivot those shares into Curry. It's just stuff doesn't look all that great today. We're essentially 10 points off the mark, or 8 points off the mark that Harden's projected for. So I don't love that as a pivot, but at least it's available to you. Nobody else really coming up critical. A few shares of Schroeder, a few shares of Brown. All the Celtics starters might go up a little bit again. You get up to like 8-10% of Brown maybe if some of the other guys don't play. So keep an eye on the changes there. Darren Fox, mix and match piece. But nothing crucial going through those from here down. Jump to forwards. I'm going to put centers on the board too. 5:30 will pick up a little time. Trey and Jalen Johnson in. Kudos. Nuke DFS, who's the highest optimal on FanDuel, or is there a can't miss value play? So among all positions on FanDuel, our Our highest exposed guys, I think, were Cade and LaMelo. Yeah. Cade, LaMelo, and Jalen Johnson. How's that for a solid trio of guys that we're getting at ridiculous exposures? 60 or more percent, essentially, for all three of those guys. You're going to see tons and tons of combinations of those three players. And then KPJ's coming up like a value play. Terrence Mann's coming up like a value play. Derrick Jones is coming up like a value play. It's essentially all the Clippers on the FanDuel slate for value because, again, everybody's out. Amir Coffey's on that board. He's coming up lighter than the field, but 34%. So pick your poison with any two of those Clippers value guys, I would say. You've also got Mo Bamba showing value at the center position for only $3,900. I've got him at 22 minutes. But it's essentially the Clippers and then whatever you want on FanDuel. If you want to talk non-Clippers values, $4,100 Tosan here. It's going to be the Nets, I suspect, for the non-Clippers values. Yeah, there's Beekman. Again, we talked about him. We talked about Tosan. So I kind of prefer the Clippers side of that. Strange as that is to say. Just really don't like that Nets team and like the talent levels we'll be dealing with. You know, as mediocre as maybe they are, but would you rather have KPJ, Terrence Mann, Derrick Jones, Amir Coffey, or like Tyrese Martin, Keon Johnson, Tosan, Reese Beekman, Nick Claxton, Jalen Wilson? Maybe you could get a little better argument. If you got any kind of minutes upside at a Dayron down here, it would be interesting. But the Nets guys that come up are not their most appealing guys. So I'll throw that in there. Cornette or Bamba? Have we gotten any Boston news yet? Absent news, that's easily Bamba. I don't see that news out yet. And Kristaps went through shoot around, by the way. Nets players available. 1, 2, 3, 8, 9. Yeah, all right, so I was right. The Nets only have these 9 players available. It's the 9 that I projected. Tyrese Martin, Keon Johnson, Jalen Wilson, Noah Clowney, Nick Claxton, Reese Beekman, Tosan Ebomon, Dayron Sharp, and Dariq Whitehead. So that is very tight. All those guys are going to be on the board at least a little bit, and they're in the positions that we've talked about. All right, let's get back on track. Resource for forwards. And centers. And then we'll... All right. Yeah, should have sorted it before I filtered it. I hate that. It's so... And now we wait. So Jalen Johnson, it's good to know that he's actually playing. Looking like a major piece. There we go. Looking like a major piece on the FanDuel board. Was coming out lighter on DraftKings, though, as I was eyeballing that before it filtered out of my view. Where the hell did he go? Jalen Williams. Mark Williams, where? Wow. So that is a dramatically different play across sites. That's why he was so far down the board. 59.3% on FanDuel at 8,200. Power forward and small forward available. 1.21 per minute for the season. That's way up from last year, but he's a demonstrably better player. Usage has been up this season. Playing at 1.21 on DraftKings, but they've got him priced at 87, and he's only available at power forward. He's not a bad option in a per minute sense. In a vacuum, this would be a better looking just individual player, maybe a smaller slate or something. 4.79 value score though. We're well off our 5.5 mark. But he does play, competitively with some of these type options. It's just these guys, you're not really talking about the same salary scale. If you wanted to go out of like $9,300 Durant to pivot into $8,400, where'd he go? $8,700 Jalen Johnson, or for that matter, $8,400 Jaren Jackson, $9,000 Devin Booker. There is some flexibility between those guys, but they're all, these guys are flexible and interchangeable among themselves, and maybe somewhat with some of these guys if there's anybody comparatively priced. But again, keep those tiers in mind. These types, especially again at price. So we've got a lot more money to spend at the guard spots, it looks like. Everything on both sites really is coming up a little bit more in the mid-range or dipping into the value pool for exposures among forwards and centers. It's less true on FanDuel, even though we're spending all that money at guard anyway. We're still getting $8,000 Mark Williams coming up a decent amount, $7,700 Bane, $8,400 Jalen Williams. Interesting differences site to site as far as how that construction's coming together. So, Mark Williams, $1,000 difference across sites. Big time exposure to him on both. We're ahead of the field on FanDuel, but we've got less in our pocket. 30% across our top 150 lineups. He looks like an absolute beast. Again, the Charlotte side of this, they're picking up plenty of pace and upside and expectations against Memphis here. 5.20 is way above our value threshold. He's been playing at 1.45 and has had some monster games since they sent Richards packing. As long as we're secure around 28 to 30 minutes, I see no issues with this play at 8,000, and it's a smash at 7,000 on DraftKings. 5.81 on the value scale, 45% exposed. That's level with the field. If you were kicking up a few additional shares, I don't think it's really a mistake. Like if you were doing it at expense of some Miles Bridges shares on the other, at a different position from the same team at a bad value tier, where we're only getting 8% of them anyway, and we're below the field. If you want to knock Bridges down to 3 to 5% and sink those shares into Mark Williams at the util spot, wherever you might have commonality between the two, definitely worth considering. Been very, very good in a per minute sense. Lou Dort, we've talked about. At worst, he's a mix and match play on FanDuel, and he's a functional piece at 32% exposed and level with the field on DraftKings. We're interestingly dead even with the field on these 4 or 5 guys, and then a lot of below the fields on everybody else. We don't have a single guy that we are even significantly above the field on among forwards and centers on DraftKings. It's a really interesting result. Just flat. Tobias, like I mentioned, the minutes trending up slightly. 33.9 in the last game. I put him right back at that level. He's mediocre. 0.88 per minute this season on reduced usage from his Philly days. He's playable. We got him 21% of the time. It feels about right on FanDuel. Both forward spots for 62. Power forward only for 56. I think maybe the lack of flexibility costs him a little bit of value on DraftKings. He is a 5.46 value. That's one of our better value scores overall, but we do have a lot of guys trending at or about or above our value threshold among these forwards, which I think is part of A, that flat distribution, and B, why so much salary was going through the guard spots. Because we've got a lot of these not crazy high-end values, but solidly right around the value threshold guys to work with at the forward spots. Nobody's offensively priced in this group either. So a few shares of Tobias, 0.80 per minute. We got him 22% on DraftKings. That's fine. Or, 28%. That's fine for your 5,600. Tosan at small forward on FanDuel, 18% exposed. Got him at 28 minutes. Feels a little aggressive. Don't really know what that's going to look like. I might kick them around a little bit. We'll wait and see what lineups look like. But again, the Nets have 9 guys today. So everybody's going to have to play. Everybody's going to be at least a little bit important. 4,100 has him on the price board. He's a 0.77 per minute player, but at least he takes a few shots. He's not dead at 12% usage. Last year, he was at just 10.8%, 0.60 per minute. 0.80 per minute on DraftKings. Again, playable, but we are below the field on both sites on him. while having a decent amount in our pockets. Najee, again, just the Dallas side of that one I'm having some problems with against Minnesota. I don't love getting too overexposed shares of $5,400 Najee Marshall. 3%, perfectly fine being there. If I have a few shares, it's okay. But I don't want to chase it. 0.85 per minute on 18.5% usage this year. 0.85 per minute on 15.8% usage last year. It's a weird mix of numbers. Nothing super appealing. I feel like that production should have gone up commensurate with that additional usage. It just hasn't. Again, we do have missing bodies for Dallas as usual, but it's not really kicking him up the board. Definitely not on FanDuel. At 47 on DraftKings, he's a lot more interesting. It puts him just under our value threshold. He's a moving part in the mix with all these guys. We got him at 22%. That's level with the field. I would kind of, especially since everybody here essentially came up flat, I would kind of maybe start playing with, all right, what can I do among these guys to get to more Mark Williams and build a little bit of a plus position there? What can I do among these guys to get to minus positions on 3 of them and plus positions on 2 of them? And, small moves within that. It doesn't have to be dramatic. You don't have to wipe out Jaden McDaniels down to 0. But if you took him down, since we're already below the field and he's the lightest owned one, if you took him from 19 to 15 and had a little bit more to work with that you could kick into Lou Dort, Tobias Harris, whichever one, Tosan, Najee, whichever one of those guys, again, I would just rather have 2 plus positions and 3 minus positions or the other way around within that group where everybody's already coming up and we know we're going to have shares anyway, rather than just being flat with the field on everything and having a big commonality of public build. Okongwu, looking at least interesting. 25% on FanDuel. He does still have the power forward eligibility, which is great. He's at a 5+ value score, right where we want him. Played 28+ minutes the other day in a start. Put up nearly 33 FanDuel points. That's okay for the money. I need him more than that. It's right around the median projection we've got him at today because he's a 1.13 per minute player. In a good game environment, I like the upside for him. 1 in 4 and we're behind the field, though, means I'm happy staying right there. I'm not going to look to chase that play, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if you put up a very nice score today. 16% on DraftKings below the field. I think it's kind of the same thing. If you wanted to slightly kick that up, it's not bad because the price is right. 5,600 puts him at a 5.68 value score. That's technically the third highest among centers and forwards. $3,100 Isaiah Stewart is coming up at a 6.04, but we really didn't get him. 8%, that's the only other guy that's higher. So a few additional shares, while not necessarily running it all the way back to the field at 25, 30%, I think is fine on Okongwu. Bain, I think we touched on during guards. He's here because he's got forward eligibility on FanDuel. Jalen Duren, we did not get any of. Coming off a very nice game the other day. 52.3 FanDuel points in 30 minutes. Super solid out of him. He's only 5,500 on DraftKings. I think you can roll those dice at worst. 5.47 value score. He's just a different play across sites. The 63 has him just off balance on FanDuel. It's an inappropriate value. We got 1 share of them and way below the field. But on DraftKings, 16%. That's another one. If you took it up to, say, 20-ish, you're fine. But I probably wouldn't do that with both Okongwu and Duren. I would probably pick one or the other and maybe do it at the expense of the other one. They're essentially the same price, same position, same projection. For me, it's Okongwu. I think he's the better of the 2 players. He's showing the better value score, and I'm giving him 2 additional minutes. So I'd probably take some of these shares away and kick Duren down to 8-10% and invest that maybe in getting more of Okongwu, while, again, still keeping Okongwu also positionally below the field a little bit, just making it maybe look a little bit more like that than like that. I hope this nonsense makes sense as I go through it. I really do. Clay and Najee are out. Well, don't play Najee Marshall now. God damn. On a day where we did not need additional value, we're going to get additional value out of Dallas now. Hey, Doug, what's going on, buddy? Good to see you. Mentioned you, I think, yesterday. Feel like you weren't here yesterday, and I said something about you. Positive, good things. But good to see you, bud. All right, so first things first, that's going to kick Grimes up the board since he's playing. We've also got, how many guys do we even have here? He's out. Got to check status on him. He's out. Yikes. I've already got Danny Gafford at 28. I suppose he's going to kick up into the 30-plus range. I had more. This is going to void out 58 minutes that I had projected here. Yeah, gonna need to think about this one and put it up. So keep an eye on where Dallas goes, but Grimey's gonna go up. I suspect Maxi Kleber will go up, and they are also going to be super short-handed. That they were already. I had a 10-man projected, and we just lost 2 of those and 2 significant minutes getters in that. Yeah, I'm going to need to see who's available beyond those 8 guys as far as projecting any of the... I guess it comes down to Gortman is the only one I can spot that I don't have minutes on that's on at least this roster. Got to give that a look. But everybody who's projected now is going to pick up additional minutes, and then the rates are going to fall where they may. But, yep, that was value we didn't need. Cool. The lingering thing on the Dallas side, and it's going to change because, again, some of those guys are going to be coming into this equation with pretty low prices now. But the thing to remember is they're still going up against Minnesota. That game's just at a 215.5 prior to losing those 2. I don't know how that has a huge impact on the total on the spread, but now we're at a case where do we really want to be drawing Kyrie without a lot of help? Grimes, Maxi, Prosper, these types. I think if you benefit on a Dinwiddie, if you benefit on a Gafford, on a Washington, or on a Kyrie, and you want to chase one of those guys a little bit more, and we were getting a few shares of Gafford already. We were getting a couple shares of Washington already. We were getting none of everybody else. And that's where I would start to question. If I'm getting the good per minute dudes, fine. But do I really, really want to chase, even though he's cheap, Quentin Grimes at 48 against Minnesota? Maxence Prosper at 37, 3,000 against Minnesota? I feel like we've already got so many good value spots that, depending on where they land, I'll give it some benefit of the doubt. I don't know that this is going to be like the crucial spot suddenly of the day. I don't love that game environment. I don't love that matchup. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of moving parts there. FanDuel's money is green too. I have to talk about them and show love. Nuke, I talk about FanDuel more than I would say anybody in this industry. The entire board is geared around talking about both sides. If you were here yesterday, I'm sure people were annoyed at how much I was talking about FanDuel. Apologies if I leaned in a little bit more to DraftKings for you in the last few minutes, but yeah, this is I play on FanDuel. My focus is FanDuel. If anything, DraftKings is annoying. But yeah, definitely a FanDuel add-on show. All right, let's get this back in business here. We're a solid chunk of the way through the forwards and centers. Not that much more to do, and obviously a changing slate with Again, especially on FanDuel where you've got that late game with the Clippers and the Celtics, there are just so many moving parts right now that by the time this locks, going to be wildly different than what we're looking at or what we've been looking at. But to continue on, so let's see. We went through these guys. Went through Bane. We were on Duran, I think was right where we left off. Nas, not really on FanDuel at 59, but at 55, he's more functional on DraftKings. We know what the deal with Nas is. You need the minutes. When he gets 33 minutes like that, he'll give you 38 to 40 FanDuel points or DraftKings points, whichever site you're playing on. But today, we're at a 4.59 value because you can't really project him to play at that level. Is he going to benefit from playing against, not as much? There's no Lively, but in the sense that you'll still have him matched up when he's out there with Gafford, with Washington out there. It's not as big a benefit on his side as maybe some of the others who are going to be playing against more direct backup types. But I could see him picking up a few additional minutes today that would push his value a little. I don't think you chase it. I don't think you push it up even to the field. But having 15-ish% looks appropriate on DraftKings. On FanDuel, a few shares is fine. If you have 4 or 5%, it's fine. What a weird way to say that. Like, who calls out 4%? Just say 5, idiot. If you have 5% of Nas, I think it's all right, but it's clearly not our best investment on this slate. Gafford at 9 potentially could go up again. That's probably going to kick into the 30s now, minutes-wise. Played 33-6 the other day. There's that score I was looking for. 77.5. I was saying high 60s. He got to the 70s, high 70s. I do not think we're getting this kind of a game from Danny Gafford today, but those minutes are probably going to be there. So this is going to go up. I would suspect that this would probably kick into the 20% range, but that'll probably still fall behind the field a little bit because the field's going to go up on that. It's probably the most appealing piece coming out of Dallas. On DraftKings at 6,000, 15%, we're below the field, but definitely viable. And as those minutes climb, the public ownership's going to climb. Our position's probably going to be the same, but I think our raw exposures are going to go up on Gafford as well. Karis LeVert, 25 minutes on FanDuel at 52. Not coming up at all. I know we've talked about him already, but again, 15% on DraftKings because he's only 4,000 over there. If he gets into that game, he's a viable value piece and at worst, a pivot point from some of these guys. On that next tier down, he's a reasonable option to get out of some of those. If you're taking 41 for small forward, power forward there and sinking it down here, you're all right. I think LeVert's going to go, but I thought that's the last time and he didn't play. A lot of flat shares around $4,300 Alger Thompson. 22 minutes in a healthy game against Atlanta at 4,300. Perfectly fine on DraftKings. I'd look to be below the field like this if you took it down to 10, 12. I think that's also viable and gives you more to spend on these guys. But he also is a rotational piece for those guys. And we got him. There's not a ton of daylight between 15% and 20%. The value scores are within range. A lot of rotational value pieces. Jalen at 26%. Jalen Williams. We've got a number of Jalen. And Jalen Williams, without the Y, got multiple Jalen Williamses on OKC and multiple Jalens on the entire slate. So I can't just say Jalen, but this Jalen, without the Y, 26%, as long as he's in the game, love the player. I would be happy to take a little bit more, but I'm glad I've got at least 1 in 4 while having a position. So I'm probably not going to look to push that back toward the field. But if I ended up with a little bit more than that, I'd be happy about it. Good per minute guy, 1.24 per minute. On DraftKings, the price at $8,200 should be a little bit more functional, but doesn't look like it is. Probably just getting chewed up for shares by some of the better options that are grabbing a bit more of the pie. But still a very functional piece and a guy you can rotate in for. Actually, maybe it's the price that's boxing him out. All these guys up here are cheaper. So actually among the higher priced guys, among forwards and centers, his 14% is actually the high watermark for exposure. $7,600 Bridges, we got less. $9,300 KD, we got less. These are the guys I talked about earlier. So that's more a product of the spend that's going through guard, I think, than anything else. But he's at worst playable on both sides. Really like the player. Really like that OKC team. I mean, my God, are they good right now and set up for the next decade or so? Coming up on 6 o'clock, 7:30 start. One more time. Hit the like button if you get a chance. Check out rotoscouts.com. I'm telling you guys, for under $1 a day, less than $7 gets you from today to next Wednesday, gets you this slate, tonight's hockey slate, football over the weekend, every hockey and basketball main slate between now and next Wednesday. If you come in, you don't like what you saw, let me know. Let me know what we can do better. Let me know why you didn't like it. But for me, the bang for the buck is there, and I'm just looking to build it. Every dollar that comes in, at least a portion of it is going to get allocated toward building the site out. Getting some helping hands, some additional voices on these shows, and so on and so forth. So check out rotoscouts.com. Give our guys over at acemind.io some love. That's where the Sims run. Great optimization and sim tools for all the major sports. They're also shockingly affordable as compared to some of the other sim tools out there in the industry. And I think you guys know who I'm talking about for just as powerful a product. So give those guys a look. Hit the like, subscribe here. Let's wrap this up. Dayron, at 20 minutes, he's not looking great. He's right there. 10% on FanDuel, 4,800 on DraftKings. We got him 1% of the time. He's a tremendous per minute guy, 1.13, 1.12 in his 17 minutes a night over 22 games this year. If he steps up to like 24 minutes before lock, that's a more interesting player. And there's a lot of flexibility around minutes for Brooklyn right now. It's just I don't know how big they're going to need to go against this Phoenix team. I don't know that Dayron's going to need to play all that much more. But the opportunity for him definitely exists. So if you wanted to flex him up a little bit, take him as an off-the-board play with a lot of upside, right now in 20 minutes, he's above our value threshold significantly. Remember, on FanDuel, we're only looking for 5. So at 4,400, he's viable now. At 48 on DraftKings, we're not quite at our 5.5. That's why we're only getting 1% of them. Not quite the same value play. So I think he only really goes up from here. Granted, he does have the ability to just play 16 minutes as well, but given how shorthanded they're going to be, I think there's a few minutes additional for him to play. So I don't mind that as across 150 lineups, I built a few additional shares of Dayron in there. The field can't be that far ahead of us at this kind of a play. So if they're at 12, 15 and we push that up to 15, 18, I think it's fine. I don't know that it's the position to go chase unless we get a little bit more security of minutes or see that change come through. Same deal for your Nick Claxtons, Jalen Wilsons, and Noah Clowneys of the world. A few shares of any one of those guys is fine. Out of the group, Claxton is showing by far the best value score at 5.28. The other two guys projected for a couple more minutes, but they're not quite as good players. Any one of those guys, though, for me, for my money, those are mix and match type guys. I don't love when Nicky Claxton's coming up a ton. I talked about Noah Clowney just yesterday. He's only coming up at 2%. Bigger share for Keon at 22 on FanDuel. All these guys are at 0 on DraftKings. And then no other real outliers outside of that Nets game. Even though we've got minutes on on several of these guys. Although Clay's out now. But Nick Richards not coming up on either side. Bradley Beal not coming up on either side. John Collins, I only gave 26 minutes in his return to action. Didn't come up on either. Obviously a very good player and a very good per minute guy. If he happened to go out there and play 32 minutes or a normal amount of minutes, then it would be problematic. But right now, for expectation, I don't think that's what we're getting. Larry Markin and Walker Kessler not coming up on either side, despite relatively close to their minutes average at 30 apiece, despite being shorthanded in that game. Part of that is OKC and their impact on that Utah team. And again, I just expect Utah to get their doors blown off today. And it's having a similar impact on the Isaiah Joes of the world, the pieces and parts from OKC, the Kenrich Williams of the world. Not that he's got many minutes on. Other outliers, a couple guys site to site that didn't get anything on FanDuel in Dean Wade, Dylan Brooks, George Niang, which honestly I'm fine not having any of those guys. Nikhil Alexander-Walker, same thing. Just one share of each of those guys on DraftKings. They're slightly more on the board on the DK slate, just given the positioning and given some price offsets. But none of those guys is overly interesting. Jalen Wells, just a .77 per minute player for 4,400. You can just do better than all of those options. And that's why we're getting such a concentration of shares up there. Again, this is an interesting group, given that it includes Booker, Jared Allen, PJ Washington, Jaren Jackson, Anthony Edwards, Amin Thompson, DeAndre Hunter, Julius Randle. Kevin Durant is right up here. He's a little bit offset from that group, but not by much. There's a lot of swappability in that group. There's a lot of high-end players in that group. Several of those guys, like the KDs of the world, you can also throw into that blender with the SGA plays, with the Trae Young plays from the guards, those upper-priced guards that weren't coming up. So we've got a few big points of concentration for our shares at the star tier, and then we've got a big blend where you can pick up, if you've got a lean, if you've got other sites that you use projecting these guys for different numbers, different minutes, different ownership exposures, you can lean into those a little bit on a slate like this because there's a lot of flexibility among that group. Just to return to the top of the board on the FanDuel slate here, again, the Clippers are your value plays on FanDuel today. That's just how it is. 3,800, 4,000, 3,900, 3,900 for all of Terrence Mann, Derek Jones, Amir Coffey, and Mo Bamba. We've got 25+% of each of those players. 3 of them level with the field. Amir Coffey below the field, but pulling 34%. Significant value because half the Clippers are out, and we still don't know if James Harden is playing. Dougie, yeah, it's a challenging slate that way. It's a bit of a wacky one. I will say, if you weren't here at the beginning, these 2 guys, or these 3 guys actually, it comes up pretty stark. And those are 3 relatively expensive guys. So if you put those 3 guys in first, and then you deal with 2 or 3 of the value plays who are immediately next, the Clippers that I was just talking about, that should at least put you on a pretty clear-cut path through what you're building there to like, all right, those are my stars. These are my values. And now I've got 5s and 6s and 7s to play with. Or maybe I can get, like, I probably would want Mark Williams in that mix. So I go like point, probably power forward on Jalen just for more flexibility through small forward. 2 of those 3 Clippers, or 2 of those 4 Clippers, including Amir Coffey in that mix. I'll consider Tyrese Martin since he comes up like that and looks exactly the same as those guys as a similar option for a slightly higher price but a better overall mark. So throw him into that bucket as well. So let's say you grab 2 of them. Let's do it. Let's just do it with these 2 guys. We'll go to the 2 highest price guys. For one, they've got the most secure and highest minutes projections. Even though actually I shouldn't do it that way because we did get so much KPJ. So let me do that. KPJ, and then I'll go to Martin to put the higher price on the board. So that's what, 5 guys, and we're spending $37.5, averaging down to $7,500 per spend for the 3 stars. And then I think I would want Mark Williams in that mix at 8. I've got $15,000 to spend on my 3 positions left, so I've got flexibility into like the $6,000 range. So maybe Okongwu, maybe a stretch. But if I put another value guy on the board, which is probably the build, so let's put like Amir Coffey on the board there. Do I have that position available? 1, 2. I think I do. Right, I didn't screw that up yet. 2 point guard yet. 2 point guards, 2 shooting guards, a small forward, a center, and a power forward. Yeah, I think we're good there. That's 49.4 over 7 positions. So now I got 10.6 to spend. We're still in like that medium tier. I can just 41 left. This would be like super Starsy Scrubsy. Actually, that doesn't fit going there. Is this a fit? It would be something like that, I think. I think that fits. But I do think getting, these three guys with the distribution that we're getting on FanDuel, with everybody pushing like 60% from three pretty starry kind of players, I do think that is our upper end there. Cade Johnson, Mark Williams, and Nets have been the strategy so far, says Doug. Yeah, and that's totally viable. I just slightly prefer the Clippers. But again, we're talking about two teams that are going to have like 9 guys available and more question marks still lingering on the Clippers. But the Nets are at worst an alternative value there that is essentially a direct pivot point for most of these guys. So yeah, if you give Beekman another 2-3 minutes, he just rockets up the board for more and more value as that goes on. But yeah, I do think we have 3 pretty clear-cut guys there, and then plenty of alternatives. Harden himself, even though we're questioning whether he plays, is an alternative on that board. I don't love the Miles Bridges option, but he's coming up at 32%. And then we had, where's our more expensive pieces? Yeah, reduced shares, but reasonably good options of Anthony Edwards, Jared. It's not a lack of talent on this slate. That's for sure. But, Ja in 3%, KD in 3%, Book in 3%. SGA, I think, was lower than that. No, Doug, I don't think that getting a lot of Trey is necessarily heavy air quotes wrong. But he was coming out lighter than these other dudes. He was one of my examples of a guy that's in that mix, in that blender of just very good players, appropriately priced, good projections with, at worst, like their normal or who they are game environments. I would say if you're getting like a lot of them, if we're at 1 on FanDuel and 11 on DraftKings and you're getting him 45% of the time, maybe you look at what the numbers look like. For me, I've got him at 35 minutes, which is right on his average. For 9,400 for the season, he's pulling 127 this season and last season exactly. I think I've got him in that territory. Come on. Oh no, that's right. I was actually fairly generous on the Hawks side of things. So I've got him already. This result that we're getting on Trey right now is with him at about a 1/10 of a point per minute above his current FanDuel production. Or more like a half, I'm sorry. The number I'm looking at is the DK number. So I've got him at 138 versus the 133 that he's played on DK. So call it about a half a point. 5/100ths of a point, not a half a point. I know that sounds very, very small, but if you add it up over 35 minutes, it becomes a little bit. So not exactly crashing the party at a little bit of an advanced rate, but I think at worst he's playable in what should be a very good competitive game environment with a reasonable enough total. So probably, yeah, as you say, feels wrong. Probably wrong to have tons, but perfectly fine to have a little bit more than this. I'm a loser till I win the mill. He says, my single entry will die with any freezing cold snowman $500 single entry or bust. I hope it doesn't die. I hope we get no snowflakes in that lineup, all fires. Always nice to pull that up and have just fire emojis down the side and then watch them slowly fade. Does that wrap us up, guys? Have we talked about everything? I feel like we've talked about a lot. Nuke's a big-time FanDuel guy. Nice. Same handle on FanDuel? Is it Nuke DFS on FanDuel? Keep an eye out for you. I'm not a head-to-head guy. People send me head-to-heads, always on DK. People from the old Awesemo days. I still get head-to-head matchup requests basically every day. I've literally never played a head-to-head in all the years I've played DFS. Never once. Yeah, Doug, I would pull back from 50% exposure. But like 15, 20 would probably be more of a reasonable target, and consider them a pivot point, assuming we're talking about a reasonable chunk of lineups. Kevin Porter time. Yeah. Again, Clippers are coming up like crazy good values on FanDuel. They don't exist on DraftKings, so enjoy that, not having to be in front of this till 10:30. Is it 10:30 or is it 10 o'clock? It is 10:30. Awesome. Oh, it's Wednesday, isn't it? I wonder if my buddy Charlie's coming over tonight. Well, there's a chance I'll have a couple beers in me by the time that last game rolls around. We'll see. Not sure what the plans are for tonight. With that in mind, though, guys, I think I'm going to punch out of here, start getting things updated, get on top of all the news that's just ready to pop. All day long, they just sit there inflating that NBA news balloon, and then 6:30, it just... That could have gone poorly as I was illustrating that. I had to think it through as I was saying it. But you guys get me. Good luck out there to you too, Andy, Cujo, Ducking, Doug. Appreciate all you guys. Loser. Could be Trav. Good luck tonight in the 500 milli. Yeah, go get it. Nuke. Appreciate you. Pink hand wave back at you, Millie. Appreciate you guys. You absolutely rock. Good luck out there tonight. Somebody go win something. Share it when you do. Come on back tomorrow for more. I'll see you.